Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I want to begin by thanking the Aspen Institute and the Franklin Project for this opportunity to be here today and for the chance to be involved in such an important conference from my perspective. You know, linking these concepts of service and learning at the higher education level, which is the topic of our next panel, has been an important part of my career in many different levels. I'm proud to say that I played a small role in the launch of the Corporation for National and Community Service back in the early 1990s, and I had the privilege of serving as an evaluator of some of the earliest national service programs. I serve on the board of my alma mater, Bates College, which has been recognized nationally for its work in service learning. And now in my role as president of the Lumina Foundation, I've had the chance to look at national service and post-secondary learning in an important new way. Now, these two ideas, national service and post-secondary learning, they're vitally connected. I think many of you in this room probably are here today because you've gravitated toward that concept of national service. But for us at Lumina, it's that second part, the post-secondary learning, that has been so important in terms of our work. The reason for that, I think, is deeply embedded in the mission of Lumina Foundation and our unusual leadership role as one of the nation's largest private foundations. Now, Lumina Foundation is unusual because we are focused on helping the country achieve a single national goal. We want 60% of Americans to hold a high-quality post-secondary degree, certificate, or other credential by the year 2025. That would be a significant increase from where we are now, which is at 40%. Now, you'll notice that embedded in that goal for the country is that these must be high-quality credentials. And quality, in our view, must be defined by actual learning, not by time, not by things like institutional reputation, or any of those other, perhaps more historic measures that I think no longer serve our talent-hungry society. For us at Lumina, this idea of a National Year of Service is deeply intriguing, not just because of the reasons that have already been articulated so clearly by others at this conference, the contributions to citizenship, the ability to create a sense of community, the character-building aspects, etc. We also see it as a great chance for higher education to increase the amount, the quality, and the relevance of experiential learning. Now, service has always had tremendous learning potential for individual students. And now I think service represents another huge and shared opportunity, an important tool that can help the nation increase college attainment and actually help us reach that goal 2025. Service, and specifically this idea of the National Year of Service, can and should become a viable, accepted pathway to college-level credentials. The important knowledge and skills gained during these kind of experiences need to be brought into the mainstream of higher education. They need to be credited as part of a seamless system that recognizes all learning, not just classroom-based learning, but learning that takes place in workplace-based settings, that takes place in the military, and that takes place through deeply engaging experiences like national service, giving students multiple ways to succeed and earn degrees, certificates, and other credentials. We feel strongly about this at Lumina, which is why my colleagues and I are working so closely with the Franklin Project and the National Conference on Citizenship on a collaborative partnership that we think will be coming to fruition very soon. We are committed to this work because we believe that if all learning should count, and it most definitely should, a year of national service must be included in that broader understanding of what higher education means to individual Americans and to us as a national community that will benefit from the social and the economic capacities that these individuals have gained. Clearly, this National Year of Service has vast potential in the context of higher education, and we at Lumina are very much interested in being part of that discussion about how best to realize that potential. And so, let's start that discussion in earnest. I have the honor today to introduce our panelists for our closing session here today, 5 people who have a wealth of experience and expertise on this topic. David Harris, the Provost of Tufts University; Hunter Rawlings, President of the Association of American Universities, known as AAU to those of us in higher education. Kurt Schmoke, the former mayor of the great city of Baltimore, who in mid-May was named president of the University of Baltimore, completing his last week as now as general counsel and interim provost at Howard University. And Drew Stelljes, assistant vice president for student engagement and leadership at the College of William and Mary. Here today to facilitate today's discussion and act as monitor is Tim Shriver, CEO of the Special Olympics. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim and for what I'm sure will be a very enlightening and exciting conversation. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the loyal soldiers who have ridden it out to the end. I was thinking about a good warm-up here, and we're across the street from the Plank Gymnasium. Has anybody heard about the planking craze? Does anybody here plank? You want to do a demonstration? You will wake this crowd up. How many people can do a minute at planking? 2? 3. Come on, don't be shy if you can do 3. Anyway, it would get everybody moving if we got our bodies moving, but in the absence of physical movement, I hope we will incite you to excitement with this terrific panel. No. The guidance I got for today's panel, this last panel, was 3 words. This panel should incite a riot. So I'm thinking to myself, we're not exactly like 21-year-old firebrands up here. We don't look like rioting kind of people. Why have we been asked as the higher education panel, as the colleges and universities panel, to incite a riot? Why do we come back over and over again to these years, 18, 19, 20, 21? I want you, just as we prepare to hear from the panelists, to think back to when you were 18. For some of you, that's going to take a little work. For others, it's a shorter trip. But try to remember where your head was, where your soul was, where your body was at 19. Are we trying to get these folks? Do we always come back to them because they're cheap, they're free labor? Is it because they've got too much time on their hands? Is it because, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be learning, and service is learning, and projects are learning. Or is it something else? Who were you when you were 19, and what would this have meant to you? Why did then Senator Kennedy in 1960 propose his vision of a country that would give itself to the world in the middle of the night at a university? Why was the average age of the torrent of blood that flowed here probably 23 or 24? Why were Cheney and Schwerner and Goodman martyrs of the civil rights movement in their 20s? Why do we think so often of this era, this period of life, as the time that somehow vectors us back to the nobility, to the ideals, to the excitement, to the thrill of service? I think it's, as an educator, I think about what's going on from a developmental point of view. There's just enough imagination still in us, isn't there? We haven't lost it completely. And yet we're just skilled enough to do something with it. All those dreams of early childhood, they're still lingering in these years. We haven't given up. We're just enough needed into a community. We're just dependent enough. We're still in our families and our communities and our neighborhoods, just enough to belong to something bigger than ourselves, but just independent enough to want to do it on our own. We're just believing enough in something bigger, but also believing in ourselves, I think, as agents of that change in this era. Churchill said, 20 to 25, I won't try to do an accent, those are the years. Don't be content with things as they are. Don't take no for an answer. Never submit to failure. Don't be fobbed off. Don't be fobbed off with more personal success or acceptance. You will make all kinds of mistakes, but as long as you are generous and true and also fierce, you cannot hurt the world or even seriously distress her. She was made to be wooed by you. Churchill reminds us that in these years represented by the men on this panel, we still think about outcomes and measures and interests and jobs and roles and partners and cooperation and processes. But maybe we've been talking about these things as one or the other. Is this a federal initiative or a local one? Is it personal or is it cooperative? Is it statistical or is it emotional? Is it about funding or is it about volunteerism? Is it about 1 year or is it about a project? All of these dichotomies in our head, I think for young people, it's all about the and. It's not about the either or. Something small and something big. Something freely given and something passionately invested in. Something for 1 year and something for a lifetime. Perhaps more than any other thing, something about me and something about us, too. I think young people want to believe. They want to fall in love. They are passionately excited about seeking out their identities, and they want to give themselves to something. They want to think this arc of history is bending toward justice, and they want to think they're a bender. Perhaps more than anything, I think the big lesson that we hope our universities teach is that if you want to find yourself, you got to give yourself away. So whatever the major is, whatever the hurdle, whatever the task, whatever the job, however many hours they go to school, whatever school they go to, whether it's small or large or 2 or 4 or weeks or months, we can ask them. In fact, so often that one word is left out of the debate at the national level, asking. A government can ask without creating a program. A church can ask without demanding fidelity. A university can ask without coercing. A nation can ask young people to give of themselves to a national purpose. We've heard it said here many times already, this is a new generation. More unified, more inclusive, more open than probably any generation in history. Have we asked them? Have we really asked them to give themselves to the nation? Have we really asked them to believe in themselves enough to give themselves away? That is the question for the panel. So I give you this extraordinarily distinguished group. They can talk about projects that are ongoing at Tufts, at William and Mary, and at Howard, and at universities and different kinds of institutions of higher learning across the country. They can talk about educating and convening and training and inspiring. They can talk about what we can do to start a riot amongst young people, a riot of conviction and purpose, a riot of individual pursuit of great things for oneself, and the pursuit of something much bigger than any one of us could dream to do alone. So with that, I will turn it over to our team. I think we should start. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we should start wherever. I love the popcorn style of moderating, which is not in sequence, not in order, not by coercion, but by inspiration. Who amongst you would like to launch us in an inspirational way towards feeling the power of starting a riot? Who's ready?
So I will just make a quick comment, picking up on where you were, and it's not what I expected to talk about, but you know, you talked about the millennials.
Yeah.
There's been an awful lot of talk about the millennials. There's another group that we need to be thinking about just as much as the millennials, in particular when it comes to higher ed, and that's their parents. Because one of the things we face, I will just say it, Tufts, one of the things I see is often the conflict between the student, who still is all the things you spoke about so eloquently, and the parents who are coming to us and saying, I'm going to pay $200 and something thousand for this education. What kind of job is my kid going to get coming out? And I want to know right now that they're going to get a really good job coming out. And so the conflict sometimes, it's the parents who need to be told, settle down a little bit. It's going to be okay, and let them dream and let them try some things. So I think we need to focus on them as well as the millennials.
Great.
Well, I'll just start by sharing a little bit of the William and Mary story, and hopefully it'll resonate with some people here in the audience and potentially speak to some call to action. The way the story really begins is quite simply, and that's that about 18 months ago, Bridge called me up and then called our president up and said, I have an idea. And when Bridge says he has an idea, many of us know that means we're going to do a lot of work. And so we got to work because we really believe in his passion and his ideas. And so President Reevely and I went out to Aspen last year, and we met with a lot of folks that were in the higher education sector, and we really contemplated what might be the role of higher education in supporting and advancing the cause. And we walked away with certainly more questions than answers, but a willingness and an interest to start to try to define that a little bit more clearly. And back on campus at William & Mary, what we concluded is that, and this is maybe a little surprise to you, but what colleges and universities do well, and especially what we try to accomplish specifically at William & Mary, is we try to educate our students. We provide them with academic content, and we provide them with a reflective process so that they can themselves make meaning of their experience. We imagine that this experience is going to be transformational, that it won't necessarily be transactional, but we will help students make meaning of their lives. And we provide content, and we provide a talented faculty to do that. We also, universities, convene people. We do a good job of pulling people together like we're doing today. And then we think that we could be effective in training and giving skill set and certifications. And so we launched a strategic planning conversation with that as background. What we're doing now is that we're going to pilot 4 fellowships, starting with our first cohort will join us on the 1st of August. And we've committed financially to 3 years to look at how these 4 graduates of William & Mary can really have an impact with regard to community engagement, meeting local needs, working with health and nutrition in low-income neighborhoods, working in education and tackling the persistent opportunity gap. And then specifically, and this is sort of one of the pieces that is a more bold vision, and maybe this is our call to action together and as a collective, is that we want to marry what is a real strategic priority of William & Mary, and I think of a lot of schools, with a strategic priority of the Franklin Project, and that's this, is that our students are coming to college, like other panelists will attest to, with a desperate interest to make a difference in the world. That's the claim of the millennials. And they want to graduate with a sense that they want their lives to be one of meaning and purpose. But we also have a lot of students that are resistant to or reluctant to discussing politics and issues of social concern across human-made barriers. And by that I mean our data tells us that as early as students are arriving at college, they've already declared a political party, and that's who they're going to spend their time with. And so what we want to do is we want to create dialogue and discussion, sort of support an environment that encourages dialogue and discussion across human-made difference. And how we're going to do that is we want to launch fellowships similar to that of the Cloth of Peace for America, where recent graduates from across the country would have a chance to be trained, to be mentored and guided by trained faculty and staff and administrators on how to initiate conversation across human-made difference. And so we want to employ students first across William & Mary and then spread it out across the country to be trained in this so that we can marry what we say is really a values and interests of a good liberal arts education with what the Franklin Project's trying to accomplish. So I hope you all will join us in that effort.
Thanks, Drew. Kurt, you talked, congratulations. You talked a little bit when we got together earlier about the politics of this, about the political discourse, about the political history. You come from representing today an historically black college, which has a rich political history as a player in the life of the nation, not just in the life of its students. Help us think about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to note one thing about the Howard, the historically black college and university, which it is. But one of our most distinguished graduates from the Howard University School of Law is Senator Harris Wofford, and I just to remind people of that. We're really proud of that, and also Just as a total aside, I didn't realize I was sitting in the back, and Ms. Parham, who was here just speaking from the Chief Marketing Officer of eBay, her mother was there and said, "Do you remember this young lady?" And I kept looking, and I said, "Yeah, sort of." And she said, "Well, you know, when you were mayor, there was this young lady from a local high school that had a project. It was to meet somebody in government. And you're the person that she came down and interviewed. So, Ms. Parham, I'm taking credit for your career. I think you're outstanding. And I'm sure it was that moment. And also, let me thank you all very much. Coming up here, you know, past the Gettysburg visitors, the park and visitor center, I thought back, trying to educate your children and everything. I brought my son up here when he was 5 years old. And it was the old visitor center before this brand new one, and there was a park ranger there. And he, in the old building there, you went into this room, it was kind of dark, and it had the whole battlefield there, and it would light up, and it would show you which, you know, the Army moved here and all this sort of stuff. So they finished the presentation. The lights come on. Park ranger says, "Are there any questions?" And my 5-year-old son's hand goes up the first time. And so I'm worried. Parents. My son, my 5-year-old, says, "I understand about the North, and I think I understand about the South, but where were the Nazis?" I remember that to this day. So you got to do a lot of education on these young people.
So what did you tell him?
What did I tell him that day? I said, "Wait till you get to college."
Home, right?
Higher education, you know, is facing a lot of challenges, always face challenges. But this is a great time, I believe, for this issue of the service year and thinking about the future of higher education, that it comes together at a great time. Personally, I believe that there is no reason that all colleges should require 4 years for a BA. I don't think that model should be the ironclad model, nor do I believe that 3 years are required for a Juris Doctor degree. That model should be under scrutiny. So if we're going to have a revolution, let's do that. Let's make major changes, because this is the time. If you're talking about reduction of cost to students, you're talking about varying the educational experience, if you're talking about looking at the world in a different way, this is a good time to talk about how we're moving the model and including the service year as a part of that. I've seen it with our students at Howard. I know a lot of people have these alternative spring break programs, but the number of our young people, hundreds of them, that want to participate instead of going, you know, off to drink through spring break, they participate in volunteer programs. At the law school, we have students that are in public interest law programs, and there are always more people volunteering than there are actual slots. And I'm watching a change slowly in the faculty, because I believe if you're going to, as a part of this model, if you're going to allow for encourage more people to participate in the service year, if you can give them academic credit, if they're going to get academic credit for it, I think you'll have more people. Now, there'll be a lot of resistance, but recently at Howard, I watched our faculty that had resisted giving credit to a program from our ROTC program. It's called Military Leadership. And every year, the College of Arts and Sciences faculty kept voting down, no, we're not giving credit for that leadership program. This year, they strong argument in favor, and they did, and it has an impact on the number of students who graduate on time that are in ROTC. So I'm seeing sort of a shift in that, but I believe right now, as we're thinking about new models for both undergraduate and graduate and professional education, that the service year discussion is its time has come.
I want to go to you, David, but just let me pause here for a second, because Jonathan Alter and I were talking beforehand. He's talking about the possibility of colleges granting some degree of admissions priority for those students, some certification of students who have given a year before they apply. And I'm just listening to you wondering, is there a way, should we be thinking about a way to certify colleges and universities that that themselves have embraced this service year concept as part of who they are as an admissions issue, as a graduate issue, as a credit giving issue? I mean, should we create an elite group of higher education institutions based on their understanding of the importance of the service year?
Who would do that?
Well, you would, of course.
Yeah. No, I think each.
Now, David would.
That each university, college and university could do that. Right. I mean, should be encouraged to do that. And then in the marketplace among students, they will decide. Right. If I can go to a place where, for example, I can get a semester doing something in the inner city or overseas and actually get credit for that, so I can graduate so-called on time. Right. That is something that I would believe would be very attractive to students and clearly to their parents.
David, you were telling us beforehand, hey, this is a unwieldy beast, these universities. Faculties make most of the decisions. They're very focused on their own criteria. It's hard to move them in any one specific direction. What could we do that would actually create some traction across all these diverse kinds of interests?
So let me try to take that on. I'm Hunter, by the way. That's David.
Sorry.
So let me just say a quick word about AAU. AAU, the Association of American Universities, is the 60 leading research universities in the US, plus 2 Canadian. So institutions like Stanford, Caltech, University of Virginia, University of Illinois, Michigan, UT Austin. These are big research universities for the most part, and they collect twice a year. The presidents come to DC to work together on federal research issues in particular. This past year, we had General McChrystal and John Bridgeland come and speak to the group because we thought this was such an important enterprise to make them familiar with. And I'm happy to say they were very, very receptive to the message of the Franklin Project. On the other hand, we haven't started a riot yet, so let me see if I can't get it started in that direction by offering a few tough questions rather than just jumping on with more good ideas. So let me just point out 2 or 3 facts about our universities and many others as well. First of all, over half the students today in college are non-traditional part-time students. So it's not like Gettysburg College or Haverford College where I went. For the most part, it is instead now the majority of students who are part-timers, non-traditional, all ages. We need to think about that when we're thinking about this question of what do we do to get college students interested. A lot of them are not your traditional student the way I was when I went to college. Second fact is that these universities today already do an enormous amount of community service through student volunteerism. This is not something we have to invent. This has been going on for years. It's major. It's enormous. University of Michigan, University of Virginia have huge numbers of students volunteering to do things, spending many, many hundreds of thousands of hours already. So that's not quite the Franklin Project, which wants a full year devoted to this full time, but it is an enormous amount of service. What do we do about that? The current situation, in other words, in thinking about the Franklin Project. And the third fact I want to mention, sort of again unpleasant in some respects, is that most of the students going to college today, A, are working, B, already doing service, C, facing big debt loads, and D, they have parents who are saying, get yourself graduated ASAP and get a job. So the idea of a year off for service is not in the cards for many, 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 many American students today who are much more worried about finishing and getting a job. Now, I say all this not to throw cold water on anything, much less the Franklin Project, because I think it's a great project and I'd like it to succeed. But I think we have to take those facts into account as we talk about this. So I haven't started a riot yet, but at least I'm trying.
But Tim, see, the important thing in Hunter's description, though, is he defined that year as a year off.
Yeah.
If it's not a year off, but a part of your program, I think that has a different impact. Right. And that's what I believe colleges and universities should consider.
So I could pick up there, perhaps. So I'm David Harris at Tufts, and I'm happy to report back on something concrete that's come out of last year's summit. It's our 1+4 program at Tufts. So I'm new to the party. Many of you have been involved in national service for many years. I got asked by one of our alums to come to the summit last year, and I thought, well, I'm a sociologist interested in inequality. I'm leading the strategic plan for the university. I've never been to Aspen. Sounds interesting. So I went not knowing what to expect, and in that first day was first taken with General McChrystal's vision, was taken with what I heard from many of you who've been involved in this movement. And Abby Fallick, I don't know if she's still here, said something that led to this project. She said, I wanted to join the Peace Corps out of high school, and they said, come back in 4 years. And I thought, wow, we've got a lot of students at Tufts who care desperately about service, who want to make a difference. As Hunter said, they're already doing a ton. I mean, Lyft, for example, has an office in Somerville. We've got dozens of students who spend hour after hour there doing great work. But I thought maybe they want to do more. And also, critically important at that time, we're talking, as all the schools are, about the challenges we face on our campus, especially among first-year students. Things like binge drinking, things like sexual assaults, and despite what you may hear, we do care an awful lot about that issue, and we were working hard on it before the last 6 months or 8 months or year. And I'm thinking in our strategic plan for our school, what if we could say to students, when you come to Tufts, you could perhaps have that first year with no tuition. People always like that part. With no classes, that's when the parents start to say, what? And you'd spend that whole year doing service. Not you would do something for a year or take a year off, and then you would come to college, but you would be part of, and I'll say 5, although it could be different, a 5-year program at Tufts. Think about how special that could be. Now, we already have affluent students taking gap years at Tufts. We have about 25 students out of our 1,300 freshman class who are taking that first year to do something else. And what I'm thinking is if that's something that our affluent students, and that's the only people who can really afford to do it, think is of value, and if that's something the research is telling us is of value, then we ought to find a way with philanthropy to make that possible for all of our students. And so the phrase became, we're going to democratize the bridge year. We're going to make sure that if you're a financial aid kid, you will have the opportunity in this program to participate, regardless of your parents' wealth. And then I passed it off, which was the great thing. I was fortunate at that same time I just hired a new dean for our Tisch College, Alan Solomont, who has been in this world for years. And I said to Alan, you know, I got a project for you when you come in. How about Tisch College being the home for this? And so we've now kicked it off. General McChrystal was kind enough to come to campus in February. We got a lot of press, mostly good, except for Slate.com, which didn't quite get it. But otherwise, it's been quite good. Last thing I'll say, I'll turn it over, is I think we can't start a riot in this group, I think, unless we say there's no lunch or something else. But I think one of the things this group has to understand is the importance of segregation. And there's a piece of segregation that the group probably does think an awful lot about, and I've heard about. And that is the fact that our society is incredibly segregated by social class. So your social networks tend to be with people of your similar class, and it's also segregated, as you said, about politics and so forth. We talk about that, we think about how we factor that into service, that's great. But there's another piece of segregation, and that is the segregation, the divide between the people in this room and the people who are not in this room. So on campus, when I talk about this, the people in this room might be surprised to hear folks say, what the heck could an 18-year-old do of value? Why would we have a program at Tufts where people take a year off? why would you possibly do that instead of having them take, if they're going to 5 years, they should take another year of my class, right? There's a whole world that doesn't quite get it. And so I think we have to think about how this group communicates better with the rest of the world if we're really going to reach the goal that General McChrystal set out for us.
Well said, great point. I would just add, as we try to sort of invigorate new ideas and encourage people to think a little bit differently, is one way to think about it is this, is that one thing that really speaks to me is the massive number of graduates who are desperate for this kind of work. So the data that we hear from Teach for America and other types of organizations really speaks to me. So what we have is we have students that essentially are graduating here and saying that I want to launch my career in this kind of work. So one way that we can conceptualize it is just that. We're helping them launch a career that's going to have a sense of, their life is going to have a sense of meaning and purpose. They want these positions. So if we are imagining describing to them or to their parents or across the different sectors, essentially what we're doing is colleges teach people. They give them skill set. Through a reflective process, they come out in a little bit different kind of a person. And what they're saying is they want to work in really meaningful agencies that have a meaningful vision. Great. We're going to give them the chance, more of a chance to do that. So we need that, right? So here's some partnership possibilities. Essentially, we need more of these Teach for America, Peace Corps, AmeriCorps experiences for our talented graduates. So we'll do really good work for you to get them ready, to have a sense of civic knowledge, civic skills, and civic values. And then we'll help them launch their careers. So let's partner in that way. Let's think of it that way.
So we want to open the conversation up. We don't have too much time, but we'd welcome questions. I thought you were going to say, when you said democratize the bridge here, I thought we were going to make bridge into a Democrat. So we can't do that. We don't have enough Republicans in the room. We have to keep
did not think that was fun.
So let's open it up. Yes, sir.
Just to respond to David, or your faculty were asked, what can an 18-year-old do? Ask the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard.
Well, it's one excellent answer. I've given them a different one. What I've said is, why don't you come with me down the lift in Somerville for an hour and see what I saw? Because again, I'm uninitiated in this whole world, but I went down there and I met a young woman who, after her 20 hours of training, was reporting back on her first morning of meeting with clients, just by chance. And she talked about this 60-year-old African-American man. This is a white woman from the West Coast who was talking about all the things she'd done working with him. It was incredibly impressive. She happened to be a Tufts student. She happened to be a freshman. I said, that's what we're talking about in the year of service. Take that skill, and that's a skill, it's a powerful skill she has, and imagine her doing it for a year instead.
But I'm just struck, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but Hunter, Kurt, and David all have mentioned areas of significant resistance in the academy. Some of it coming from faculty, some of it coming from assumptions, some coming from money and function and structure and so on. I wonder whether what we're not describing here or discussing here is not, again, we've shifted, funnily enough, maybe it was obvious to everyone else, but I thought we were going to be discussing kids and what we can do with kids. What we're really discussing here is how can we reshape, in some ways, some of the hierarchies of education, the idea that a university professor thinks that he or she knows something that they have to bolt on to a child with that kind of mentality that only by pursuing their rigor and their particular idea of learning, that learning takes place. I mean, to me, that's almost like, I guess it's a problem, right? I mean, sorry, yeah.
Well, I think that we don't want to give the wrong impression. These universities support volunteerism on a huge scale. It's going on now. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hours of student volunteer community service. So that's all good from my perspective, and I must say from the perspective of most faculty. Where you get into some controversy or difficulty if you say, for example, let's give academic credit for community service. That's in the province of the faculty. Some faculty say, okay, let's do. Other faculties are going to say, no. We're not in that business. So that's the type, but it's not an opposition to service at all.
I want to hear other people, but yeah, I'll stop. I have so many questions. I have to stop. Yes, sir. Then we'll go to the back.
I think you're looking at service as having no intellectual content. And therefore, you're looking at a year off, or you're looking at a 5-year program at Tufts. When I was an undergraduate, I worked my senior year in a congressional campaign, wrote a paper, worked on Governor Hughes' response to the Newark riots, showing my age, wrote a paper, graduated on time, took no courses. My last year of law school, I campaigned for George McGovern in 3 states, served on the Credentials Committee of the National Convention, published a paper in the George Washington Law Review, and graduated on time. So there are many, many worthy years service opportunities that have intellectual content that you can build a paper or reading into,
Right.
achieve all the goals, and graduate on time.
I just wanted to add then to that, it's just that I think that's just part of the reality of the work that we do, but there are hundreds of champions for the kind of work that you're talking about. Our colleagues and friends from Campus Compact are here, and we've got institutions of higher education presidents represented here whose vision is to become premier institutions for engaged learning. So I think we were presenting some challenges, but the reality is there's opportunities with, we've got our Campus Compact friends here who've been doing this work for 25 years.
But so the question, if I can press it a little bit, granted that universities are hotbeds of service. I mean, I think we all know that. But there's this a little bit, I'm hearing this a little bit, this dichotomy. There's the real work of the university, which is the serious, you know, the elite universities, they have serious requirements. And then there's the co-curricular, you know, extracurricular, clean up the stream and teach the children thing over there. And it's wonderful that the kids do it, they have the time. But there's a little bit of a separation, at least in spots.
There may be now, but I think the model that was just described is something that's coming, and
right.
You'll see more of that.
So the question I want to maybe invite everyone to help us even answer or ask is, what could we do here? What could we do in the next 10 or 15 minutes? What idea could shake up and expedite that process of a more integrated view? I don't know the answer, but I know there's a couple of hands over here. Yes, ma'am. And then there's
if I could just speak to that, because I think
oh.
That's exactly the point. My name is Rich Limesider. I work with Echoing Green. We've had a project over the past few years to take the lessons we've learned from 27 years of supporting social entrepreneurs and bring those to college campuses. So that's our Work on Purpose program, and it's worked with many of these institutions here. Before that, I actually worked for the Aspen Institute at a program to bring social issues into MBA education. And our sort of calculation was, if you wanted to get a dean, a provost, a president interested, you had to put it into a ranking. So we actually made up our own ranking of business schools, and we had our calls answered much more frequently. It was great. But we learned that to get things sustainable on the campus, it had to be mainstreamed into the faculty, particularly the tenured faculty. And so one of the answers we saw, but
yeah,
thanks, is that probably a tenured faculty member, so congratulations. Not so easy to do anymore. I'm curious what other ideas. One of the things we saw was that small research grants on campus to get professors to actually move their own work, the work they saw as actually core to their lives and paths around key issues, could sort of bring them on board. What are you all doing, and what can you do to bring the tenured faculty who frankly know that they just need to wait a few years and you guys will be gone, but they will still be there in the president's office, the dean's office? How do we do that?
Well, research is a very important concept here, especially for the universities that I represent. And merging research with service is often a fabulous thing to do because it's full of intellectual content, as was mentioned earlier, and it's of great service to whatever group or individual you're trying to reach. I do think we ought to be concentrating on the people we're trying to serve, by the way, and not just the students who are serving. That is, the reason to do this is not just to make students happy or involved and engaged, all of which is great, but to help people who need the help, and I don't want to lose that.
I think just to quickly say, I just want to, I guess, disabuse you of some I think, stereotypes about higher ed. And first is there is no such thing as higher ed. There is incredible diversity in higher ed. We have very different missions across what's called higher ed. And even within a particular piece of that sector, we are very different schools in many cases. So I want to get us away from any thought that if 1+4 is successful at Tufts, it's something every school ought to do, or even all the schools like us. What's the right program will vary tremendously by school. The second is, it's what you were saying about rankings. I guess, well, as a provost, I will tell you that saying it will affect the rankings would have this much credibility with my faculty if I'm trying to make an argument. They will not, that in fact may have negative effect. If I come in and I say, we got to do this because there's some rankings and it's going to help us, they're going to say, you don't get Tufts. Our core mission, you tell me how it's going to affect the core mission of this university. Don't tell me how it's going to affect the rankings, because frankly, I don't care. So I think we have to be careful about how we make the arguments to people, and that's what I'm hoping to do with 1+4 for Tufts. And some people have said the math debate, why 1+4? So we need to have proof of concept. We need to show this thing works at Tufts, then we can expand it where we
Right, but so here's, you're next. I want to ask this question in a way that is as provocative as I can make it and still be polite. Do we want to create trends in the right direction, or do we want to make fundamental change? And there are a lot of trends. There are a lot of things we can do to move the ball forward. And I don't know that that's wrong. I'm just asking the question, is that really what we're here for, to feed trends, or are we here to brainstorm paradigm shifts? I don't know. Yeah.
Lisa Hamler-Fugit, Ohio Association of Food Banks, and home of land-grant university, who we benefit greatly from, the Ohio State University, and the wonderful students and the amount of volunteerism that they provide. But I think you've touched on a point that really is the kind of elephant in the room and the next true crisis, which is the statement that most students are working and carrying huge debt loads and are under pressure to get a job. Our experience right now is that we have about 5 applicants for every 1 opening that we have in our national service program, highly competitive. And I am deeply troubled by a statement that I've been continuing to hear for the past few years. If I don't get this job, meaning this placement with your national service programs, I will be forced to leave the country and go teach English in another country. These are college graduates which are heavily educated, highly in debt, and cannot find opportunities in our state or in our nation, and are going to Vietnam, China, Thailand, you name it. They are going there to teach English to their children. Now, if this is the best and brightest and we can't provide them additional opportunities through national service to give back to our nation and our communities, we're in real trouble. And I think that's the elephant in the room, is that we pressure kids and our non-traditional students to get an education, but what's the pathway to a career?
Good. So we have lots of hands, which I love seeing. I'm going to ask that we try to get as many hands to speak, and I'm going to beg you to suggest a riot-causing solution, as opposed to telling me about your own particular trend line. And I don't mean any disrespect to the work in the room, but we've only got supposedly 5 minutes, and I want to hear from as many people as possible. So let's go as quickly as we can with riots. I'm thinking riots, gang, riots.
All right, get your bayonets out.
Okay, let's go. Talk.
I'm Regina Best from Dallas Area Habitat for Humanity, and I'm making a suggestion. Why not offer it as work study to help pay for college, and also have the colleges match the Siegel Education Award to help lower the cost of college?
So a funding solution, which would be big, right? So this debt issue, there's public policy people in this room that are really smart on this stuff. There's got to be a solution to the financial structure of this dilemma. I don't know what it is, but this gentleman over here is waving really vigorously. Sorry. Could I get, and I'll let you guys.
I'm Alan Solomon. I'm the dean of the Tisch College Tufts. I'm going to take the liberty of
baby.
speaking in the presence of my boss. I just wanted to talk about what the purpose of all of this serving is, at least, and it's twofold. And it's a responsibility of the university and higher education in the 21st century. One is to produce active citizens, good citizens, better citizens, responsible citizens, and the other is to use the resource of universities to solve big problems. 15 years ago, Tufts University created the Tisch College of Citizenship and Public Service because we believe that universities should no longer be ivory towers, and that in today's America, where our civic institutions are coming apart at the seams, that we've got to do what General McChrystal has challenged us to do, which is to create a more responsible citizenry. But we also integrate it with the intellectual and the teaching purpose. We do research. We're the nation's leading authority on civic engagement. And so
how are you going to start a riot?
How are we going to start a riot?
Yeah.
We've got to teach universities they can no longer be ivory towers, that faculty who don't believe that this is the purpose of a university in the 21st century don't belong in universities anymore.
All right, that's a tenure question. I think it's a great idea. Other suggestions? Yes, sir, in the back, and then we'll come up here in the front.
Stephen Angel Smith, American University.
Yes.
My colleague from the Peace Corps mentioned a real riot starter yesterday, and that's debt forgiveness. A very practical, simple policy solution. Debt forgiveness in exchange for service opportunity. AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, City Year, Vista, et cetera, and the future ones that don't exist yet. Debt forgiveness. We all need to push that. Thank you.
Huge, huge. Why not? I mean, does someone owning that bridge from here, like, because it just seems like everybody, that seems like a big one.
Can I just say quickly, this is the,
Yes.
but this is the, and this is, a riot, so too high
Yeah,
a bar.
go ahead, go
It's this is a complex system. This is my concern, and I talked to Alan Casey, he told me I could say it in front of the group. This is a complex system we're dealing with. At Tufts, what we're doing is trying to get our students more involved. We're doing zero to affect the supply of jobs.
Right.
We're only affecting, marginally, the funding for it, and what we're doing is sustainable, hopefully, for the 50 kids. I'm not sure how we do it if we were to expand it to a third of our population. So the question for the Franklin Project, really, is about what it wants to be. The Franklin Project could be something that pulls people together once a year and hopefully affects their trajectories, the way it did with me and the way it did with Tufts. Or the Franklin Project could decide that it wants to be a group that really takes the reins, and it has people who are really coming together in a it's your day job systematic way with key folks around the country in these sectors, providing a staff member to whoever the higher ed lead is to really make it happen, so we can really see it occur. Because my concern is there's all these great ideas, but unless that core is there, it's not going to happen as a complex system. We'll come back next year and someone else will say the loan forgiveness.
General, you got the job, General. You got to lead us. Yes, ma'am, please.
So based on, what Wendy said yesterday, 152 colleges matched the Ed Award. 4,599 colleges and universities in this country. Every one of those universities should offer some incentive for service, bottom line, whether it is matching the education award, whether it is a year off of service, whether it is credit for your service. If the big idea is that 4,599 colleges recognize service, then we will go a long way to ensuring that every single one of the kids that graduate from high school or some other institution go on to colleges and universities. That would be my big idea.
Great suggestion. Anybody else? The hands are fading as I keep inciting riot. Yes, in the back, this gentleman, and then we'll come all the way over here. Or you're next to someone. You'll be next, sir. Oh, right over here. You guys got him going. Well done.
Hi, my name is Gilbert Bonafé, and I'm with the National Council of Young Leaders. I'll keep this quick. I just wanted to say that I would love to see, we have four-year institutions represented up here, and I'd love to see four-year institutions work with community colleges to, in some capacity, because a little less than 50% of our population goes to community colleges. And
so what could community colleges do? Do you have I think we all recognize that's a big, gigantic, and growing constituency. Frequently 2-year, sometimes 4-year. What could, working, all the issues, non-traditional learners, part-time jobs?
Yeah, no, I think that if we, expand admissions offers to students of community colleges that have also included service in some capacity to these four-year institutions, I think that would be one small step towards doing
Great.
that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
Great. Hi, I'm Mark Este from Campus Compact, and thank you for the shout out to us. We've been busy at this work for the past 30 years in terms of getting colleges more engaged with the community. And I myself am actually an alum of the Campus Compact AmeriCorps Vista program for 2 years. All right, thank you. And many of our programs still run robust Vista programs and are really committed to this service. And we have a whole plethora of different colleges. We serve community colleges, public, private, 4-year, 2-year, everything. But for us, the riot moment, what we need to get people involved in this is for our organization from the very moment we begin, it starts with the presidents. We have to get the buy-in from the presidents. We have a couple presidents here, Leo Lambert, who's been a champion, and obviously President Riggs here from Gettysburg College has obviously shown their commitment. But for people at institutions, it has to come down from the president. It has to come from the top leadership. And that's what we need to keep this movement going, because those are the thought leaders in this community within our country.
I want to put General McChrystal on the spot to close this, but I'm going to ask him how he would answer these questions with respect to West Point, with respect to admission and those kinds of things. It might be interesting just as we close in a minute or two, but we have a couple more hands. Oh, sorry, yes, right here.
Cohen, University of California, Hastings College of the Law, and founder of Lawyers for America program, trying to do service. With all due respect to Tufts, I'd really love to send General McChrystal and Bridge to talk to the folks at US News and World Report, because if they put service in their criteria, it will have an impact.
All right, another challenge. I'm getting the what was the old show where you get gonged? I'm about to get gonged, so you've got to go very fast because they're going to come up and grab me. Yes, sir, right here, and then one in the back, and then we'll come over and have the final. You got to go quick, please.
Michael Montalongo with Sodexo. Just a quick preface to what perhaps Stan might say about West Point, but I'll offer this, is if there's a way that the academic community writ large can do a paradigm shift and begin to adopt as their collective mission to train, if you will, youngsters, adopting the whole person concept, of which service would be a piece of that. And frankly, that's what all of the academies, service academies, traditional service academies, have been doing for many years. Is just not that they're academic, that they're excellent in academics or excellent in sports or that sort of thing, but that what we're doing is training individuals or leaders of character. Then you can begin to broaden these kinds of activities and include it into the overall mission of the university or the college or the community colleges.
Thank you. Last, and then we're going to give the panel 1 minute, 30 seconds each. And I know, okay, it's just food. Come on, this is so good. This is so rich.
All right, I'm gonna make this really fast. I have an idea. So I'm a graduate from a university, Morgan State, and oftentimes universities have job fairs or career fairs where we have a lot of corporate organizations. So I think it would be nice to maybe start having service year fairs where we have different service corps from around the nation come and offer, other solutions besides going into corporate work, because the AmeriCorps stipend has helped me. It helped me pay 70% of my student loans off. So maybe instilling something like that into the university.
That's your project, the service year job fair. What a great idea. What a great idea. You get another year of service to build that out. You can take it all across the country. These guys will figure out how to pay for it. Last comment, and then we're going to go to the panel. I'm sorry. I'd love to continue the conversation because this is great.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Matt Ronan. I started an organization called Impact Year about 6 months ago to do this very thing. It's based in part on the Special Olympics, which, for those of you who don't know, is started by Dr. Ludwig Gutmann. When he started it, people with spinal cord injuries would die after a year, and now they live meaningful lives and they're part of society. It's based on, in part, the Special Olympics model, which grew from there. Long story short, a 4+1 model. I work with great corporations like Sodexo, like Cisco, who hire classes of undergrads, and I help them defer a portion of that class for just 1 year. And for 1 year, they work full-time in a nonprofit organization. Now, and after that year, they come to the company. How college is going to help, that's a lot of money for a corporation for them to pay even a stipend salary. If college can help defer or give some loan forgiveness for that year, that would make a big difference and would allow corporations to expand those programs. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's go, Hunter, you started, you got to go last in the beginning, you get to go first on the wrap.
I just think of all the things I've heard today, the most important one for the Franklin Project, in my view, to work on in a concentrated way is figuring out how to go to Washington and get debt forgiveness for service. That's a practical, pragmatic, real idea that would make an enormous difference.
Kurt, can you lead us?
I agree with...
Are you leading that?
I agree with Hunter
you
on that.
know politics. Come on now, step up. Let's hear it.
The bottom line comment from me is that there's a model for all this in the Old Testament in the book of Nehemiah that talks about how you can overcome major problems by each person working together in their small little group. It says, to the amazement of their enemies, they accomplish great things. And I believe that this group, to the amazement of a lot of people, will accomplish great things.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Bill?
I would say to those that are interested in partnering with higher ed, look to their university mission, vision, strategic plan, and see that across the country, colleges and universities are including active citizenship and engaged scholarship in their work and in their priorities. And so we are preparing students for a lifetime of success as it relates to them being active and involved in their communities.
So the last thing I'd say is, I guess, in higher ed, I believe that this group has more support than it knows and more opposition than it knows. And so I think it's critically important that as you think about higher ed can be a part of this, you've got to engage us and recognize, again, the tremendous heterogeneity in our missions and our schools, and know that having one university president, provost, or faculty member is telling you about one school, and don't assume too much about what else it tells you.
General, do you want to say anything? I already put you on the spot, so you have to now.
Am I on? Okay, great. Yeah, this has been the most interesting and also the most disturbing panel of the 3 days. to be frank.
That's what school, that's what universities do, right?
And I'm going to speak in my role as chairperson in a minute. Now I'm speaking in my role as just attendee. I actually think higher education is out of step with America right now, and I think it's pretty comfortable, and I think it's going to have to do some changes. Now, America's going to have to do some changes too. But I think, David, I would take, well, really with all of you, I'd take a little bit of, actually a pretty big, I think y'all are pretty comfortable where you are, and I think you're going to have to get less comfortable where you are, because I actually don't think it's as good as we think it is. I went to West Point about 6 weeks ago to pitch this to the superintendent of the military academy. Got a very positive response. I said, what if people did a year of service before they started their 4 years at the military academy? And a very positive response, because I'd have been a better Army officer had I done something different before I went on, because it would have just prepared me better. And so I think that model is very positive. So, and I agree with debt forgiveness, but Hunter, my point on that is that's kind of pushing it to somebody else. Instead of looking internal at colleges, you sort of said, solve that external problem and it'll go away. And I think that we all need to look internal at each of our parts of the world. Everybody in this room is going to have to change, and a lot of institutions and people that aren't in this room are going to have to change if we're going to make progress.
Thank you, General. I had great comments. I had a different quote before we started this to try to close us, but I'll end with a Gloria Steinem quote. You shall know the truth, and it will set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. Thank you all very much. Great job. Really thought-provoking. Well done, guys.